Hi guys, welcome to my channel. Today I would like to talk about the topic of changing masculinity. And it's actually about the kind of masculinity without men. So it's going to be very interesting and I will going to talk about androgyny and the enigma of Miss Amelia, who is one of my favorite character. And by the way, my name is Pang Huiyuan. You can also call me Blake. So the first question we're dealing with is called androgyny. This is a hard word and it was firstly offered by Virginia Woolf in A Room of One's Own, which is also a very good book. And it also emphasized the quality or state of being neither specifically feminine or masculine. So androgyny for Woolf is a liberating state, one that allows us to distort or escape what she sees as the most constraining discourse in our society, which is, of course, gender. And Wolf described the word androgyny as the state in which the individual is the freest. So it's actually a very good state of being androgyny. So next one, let's say what exactly is androgyny. So in last pages, we talk about androgyny from like a literature review. And now I would like to see what exactly is androgyny in the real world. So from those six pictures, we can see like from the 70s pop stars to the recent very famous K-pop stars. And also we can see from the actor to singer and also from the international field to like Chinese field. We can see that is androgyny a fashion choice or being transgender or even like someone's sexual orientation? I think the answer is absolutely no. It's a form of gender expression and is about not conforming to the rigid gender roles. So it's about complexity, it's about freedom. So this figure shows us that masculinity does not belong exclusively to men, and the femininity is not the property of women. Androgyny disconnects gender traits from gender bodies. It reminds us identity is fluid. Gender is performance, and every performance is a kind of truth. Next one, I will talk about the relationship between androgyny and masculinity. Androgyny can include masculine traits just like it can include feminine ones. And what makes androgyny powerful is that it breaks the link between masculinity and men. And also it challenges the idea that masculinity belongs only to men, right? So that comes to my favorite part. Who is Miss Amelia? It firstly appears like this. She was a dark, tall woman, with bones and muscles like a man. Her hair was cut short and brushed back from the forehead, and there was about her sunburned face a tense, haggard quality. And as you can see, the writer is McCullers, and you probably can guess it is one of my favorite novel called The Ballad of the Sad Café, written by Carson McCullers. And as you can see, can you make a guess who is like Miss Amelia? Yes, the right one. So let's step into the world of the Ballad of the Cafe. And as you can see, Miss Amelia is a tall, muscular woman, and she brews liquor, fights men, and runs her own store. She wears overall and cuts her hair very short, as you can see here. The villagers think she's a freak. And in this novel, The Ballad of the Sad Café by Carson McCullers, it tells the story of Miss Amelia. And she is a strong androgynous woman who runs a store in the small town. And there is a tragic three-angle love. One hunchback stranger named Cotton Limon arrives claiming to be her relative. She opens her heart and transforms her shop into a cafe, and their bond is shattered when her cruel ex-husband, Marcy Massey, returns. In a twist fate, Lemos sides with Marvin and betrays Amelia, leaving her emotionally devastated. And the story explores non-traditional gender roles and the pain of unrequited love. So we can see that um, she is often misunderstood by the villagers. Amelia. Here's a description of the reaction of villagers to Amelia. It says, they remembered that Miss Amelia had been born dark and somewhat queer of face, that early in youth she had grown to be 6 feet 2 inches tall, which in itself is not natural for a woman. So it's like Amelia defies everything a Southern belle is supposed to be. Yet she is not hollow, she is capable of deep, aching love. And there's kind of description. The appearance of Cousin Lyman revokes the femininity of Miss Amelia. So the last slide we talk about the masculinity of Miss Amelia. As you can see, it is constructed by the villagers. And here Miss Amelia enjoyed a peaceful life until Cousin Lyman, a hatchback, came to the town. She fell in love with him and opened a cafe for him to make friends. We can see when she watched him, her face had a bright, soft look, and when she spoke his name, there lingered in her voice the undertone of love. So here we can see that there's a kind of femininity when Miss Amelia met Cousin Lyman. And now we can see there's a tragic ending. We call it the sexless ending. Her ways and habits of life were too peculiar ever to reason about. Above all, they remembered her puzzling marriage, which was the most unreasonable scandal ever to happen in this town. And it's a face like the terrible dim face known in dreams, sackless and white, with two great crossed eyes which are turned inwards so sharply that they seem to be exchanging with each other one long and secret gaze of grief. So it actually this is a downfall of Amelia. And it's like this is not just sadness, it's the erasure of gender, which means she is no longer masculine or quite feminine. She becomes unreadable. And I think it's quite symbolic. Her gender ambiguity frightens the town's social order, so her destruction is like a culture correction and a punishment for refusing the binary. And let's see why Miss Amelia matters. So because she embodies resistance, she exists in defiance of domesticity, femininity, and also male control. She earns her own money, treats her own wants, and refuses to belong to anyone. It's kind of a lonely kind of freedom, yeah. And I think her story isn't tragic because she expressed her gender differently. It's about emotional vulnerability, something everyone, regardless of gender, can relate it to. She's actually not a field woman, and she's a woman who feels to obey, and that disobedience is what makes her dangerous. And her tragedy isn't that she was different, it's that her difference was never allowed to survive. Like she's portrayed with dignity, grief, and complexity. And the next one, real world reflections on androgyny. Like people like Miss Amelia shows us how gender expression can challenge society's rules. And when someone doesn't look or behave like what we expect from a man or a woman, society often responds with discomfort or even violence. But this kind of androgyny also invites us to rethink those expectations. So, what does Miss Amelia leave us with. We can have those questions. Like, do you know someone who doesn't fit neatly into the label man or woman? And do you know someone whose energy, presence, or self-expression sits somewhere in between? And do you know someone like Miss Amelia, strong, vulnerable, misunderstood, but entirely themselves? And we can also consider that what if gender wasn't a bore but a horizon? What if strength looked like tenderness? What if identity didn't have to explain itself? So here we can see that androgyny is not the middle point between two poles. It is a refusal of the poles themselves. It says, I will not pick a side in a game I never agreed to play. So Amelia's defeat is haunting, but her existence is a revolutionary. Because to live outside the binary, to embody both strength and sorrow, is to challenge the very language of gender. And maybe, just maybe, that's the first step toward freedom.